And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Aimee Champion, who was an atheist before her NDE, and afterwards she became a Buddhist. Aimee, thank you for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, if you don't mind, I guess we should just start on the day that it happened and go from there.
Okay. January 9th, 2009, I was undergoing an extensive surgery. I had had a double mastectomy and a tug flap reconstruction of my breasts, which is muscles from my thighs that then created new breasts. So it's like an 18-hour surgery, and it included all kinds of connecting nerves from my leg muscles into my chest. We knew that it was going to be a very, very long surgery. At some point during that surgery, I lost a lot of blood, and apparently they didn't have enough of my blood type on reserve. I essentially bled out. I came back with a brain injury, having lost too much blood on the operating table. So that was January 9th, 2009. I remember joking with the surgeons about being an attorney, and, you know, they always want to chat with you as they're putting you under anesthesia. They didn't want me to sue them if anything went wrong. And then I became aware of the darkest dark that I could perceive. And then I became aware of pinpoint light in what I perceived to be a very far distance that I was going to it, or it was coming to me. I don't know if I was being pulled or propelled from where I was. So that became what I think other people describe as the tunnel. And as I approached the light, it became more and more pure, the whitest light I've ever seen. And it became, my perception started to feel like just enveloped in a hug. It was pressure, but not in any way confining or, you know, choking, but just like a hug all around. I remember thinking, I'm dying, I've died. And I remember asking, have I done enough in my lifetime? And then there's like this chuckle that was okay, first of all, none of this was auditory and none of this was visual. It was all sort of a telepathic perception. And I got kind of the feeling of a chuckle and a masculine kind of chorus. So multiple beings or entities that sort of in a nice but patronizing kind of a way. You've done enough. You haven't taught enough. I've always been a very curious person and very interested in learning. And so to me, I of course I still had more to learn. I was only in my late 30s. And the response was that I hadn't taught enough. So then I remember feeling a little stunned. I remember asking, what was it that I needed to teach? And then immediately being transported to this, people call it a life review. It was not a linear thing. It was like my entire life, everything that I had ever done, positive or negative, and anything that I had experienced, positive or negative from others, all into one compact moment, I guess, where I was able to see like puzzle pieces fitting together in like 3-dimensional ways. Any pain that I had made sense. And the people that had caused the pain or who were instrumental in that pain became very clearly necessary. And my sense of valuing good and bad, positive and negative, evil, heavenly, whatever, went away because it was all necessary. I remember realizing in that moment that value judgment. I have, like I said, I've always been very interested and curious and interested in learning. In my career, I've been very data oriented, very macro policy. I want the data behind policy decisions. I evaluate social service programs for a living. So it all just sort of, the positive and negative, the Likert scale, that all went out the window. So it's certainly made life interesting coming back, because I was so grounded in valuation. I remember feeling an absolute purity of love and unconditional love that I hadn't been able to conceive. You know, everybody talks about unconditional love, right? And we tend to talk about that in terms of families, but I understood that it was much, much broader than that, much deeper than that, more encompassing. I had a sense of just, it's hard to put into words, but a sense of calmness and being okay. I was okay for the first time that in my experience that I could relate to. I felt completely, wholly okay. Like there was nothing more that I needed to do, nothing that I was missing. I felt whole and I felt okay. And I felt absolutely loved and I felt forgiving and forgiven. And then the life review was over and I went backwards or forwards. I don't know if it's a sphere. Maybe I went in a whole other direction. And then I came to realizing that I was in the intensive care unit. The person in the bed next to me was crying out in agonizing pain. He'd had some sort of a brain surgery. And my then spouse was trying to communicate with me. I immediately asked for a chaplain who came into the room and fumbled through my chart. And he looked at me and he said, "It says you're an atheist. What is it that you want me to do for you?" And I remember saying, I don't know, but I experienced something and I figure you're the person that can talk about it with me. And he said, "Well, if you can't tell me what you need, I can't really help you. But when you figure it out, feel free to call me back." And so then it took me like 2 years to even mention to anybody that I had experienced something. I had been an atheist. I was raised an atheist. I had scholarships to law school for my atheism. And I was very, rational and data-based. And there's not a whole lot of data about this kind of an experience. Certainly people coming back and saying, "I experienced this." And if they do, quite frankly, they're most often referred to mental health people and psychiatrists, which I did have a bout of that over the last, almost 13 years. So I shut up. I didn't talk about it. It seemed too unreal. Shortly after that, leaving the hospital, getting back on, getting into my rehab. I had a brain injury as a result of losing too much blood. So I had a lot of focus on my physical well-being and cognition, and executive function was an issue, continues to be, although it's better every day. And I remember I was an attorney. I remember, having clients where we're standing in court and it's all controversy and debating and having positions and being rational and presenting facts and data. And I remember thinking, none of this really feels right. None of this really feels as valuable as the court is making judgments on it. My client's position, while I can understand it and empathize with where they're coming from, isn't the totality of the picture. This horrible person over here that did these things to them had a role in this person's life, and this person had a role in their life. And so it made my academic existence pretty meaningless. So I started reading and researching. It was all very, very new. I hadn't been exposed to Buddhism really at all. I knew Buddhists exist, but I didn't have any grounding. So after some years of just reading anything I could get my hands on, I started to recognize that my fundamental belief system is truly most in line with Tibetan Buddhism. I've never met a Tibetan Buddhist in my life. So I could be making this up, but that's what makes sense academically when I read about the various iterations of Buddhism. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know. There was a chorus of people that sounded like men in my head. You could call them angels. You could call them spirit guides. You could say it's the Buddha. I think that's highly plausible. I do believe in reincarnation. I believe that I cheated a life there because I died and came back into this one, and that makes me feel really lucky to have this new awareness and integration within the same lifetime. It makes my life make a whole lot more sense, I think. So that's that. That's how that happened. The big salient points for me, not so much the tunnel. The light was really incredible, but really that life review and that sense of everybody's really okay. Like there really aren't mistakes that make it so horrible that our energy ceases to exist. Our energy continues to go from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And so I'm a lot less judgmental of people. I find conflict very difficult. And I'm a professional conflict person, right? Isn't that what attorneys are supposed to be doing? Mm-hmm. It's really been about how to integrate and live true to what I know to be my reality now, what I know to be reality from the experiences that I had.
Aimee, thank you for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah.
When you were first in the part of your experience where it was very dark, did it have a velvety texture to it or any texture at all?
Texture? It felt like cold air. It felt like the darkest night in New England. Cold, airy, breezy. That's what it felt like to me. And the closer I got to the light, the warmer it felt. And again, that pressure, it's like the wind started to, more like humid Texas air. That's how I would relate it.
You mentioned that you felt like you were being hugged. Would that be a comforting hug or like someone squeezing you too hard?
Totally comforting. And it's interesting with the brain injury, I have a lot of neurological hoopla. And so since then, and since I've figured out the brain injury, I now sleep with piles and piles of weighted blankets. And that's the closest thing that I could describe that what that pressure during the NDE felt like was just weighted blankets all around me. So it was very comforting.
A couple of experiencers express that going through the tunnel is like the action of leaving your body. Do you think that's true for you?
Yes. Absolutely. Especially in hindsight, being in my body feels like I'm sort of just listless in human existence. When I'm in deep meditation, when I was in the NDE, I felt connected, absolutely grounded and connected. So I do think that I was separate from my body and that I came back to my body. And I feel like my body is all goofed up now because of the brain injury and the peripheral nervous system. And that I feel most whole, most connected when I'm in deep meditation, for sure.
When you actually made it to the light and therefore you left your body, do you feel like you expanded and you covered a large amount of area with your beingness?
Yes, definitely expanded. And I think that the coming back had to expand my own. I don't know that my brain is bigger, but it expanded my own sense of space within my body and coming back. And I struggle with, I don't know if it was it feels like I went into a sphere and the meat of the NDE is at that center of that sphere. And then I came out on a different part of that sphere. And so being in that sphere was really being connected to the center of something much, much bigger. And that our humanity is outside of that sphere. It's like a soul home or a spirit home, maybe a hobbit hole. I don't know. I don't have the language for it. Atheists don't talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a nomenclature.
After or during your life review, do you feel like you were being judged or you were judging yourself?
I feel like the lesson learned is that I was my harshest judge, that I was not being judged. The lesson was there is no judgment. Judgment is a human construct. And so much so that we have, categories and values and societies built on judgment. And it's strictly a human thing. Beyond our humanness is judgment free. We're so whole that we don't judgment is like carving us down and shrinking us and limiting us. And I think that, from this Buddhist place that I come from now, I think that we choose to incarnate for the purpose of creating these cages and limits to play around with humanity. And because you can't do that in strictly soul space, because we're all one. We're all of that same center of that sphere. We're all part of that unconditional love and commonality, that we incarnate for the purpose of distinction and for the purpose of judgment.
Living here in this realm, we have a sense of what's right and wrong. We have laws pertaining to what's right and wrong. Does that all go out the window on the other side? Like there's no right or wrong there at all. There's just maybe experiences.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Which has made me think a lot about personal autonomy. As in our human incarnation, we have to have a healthy sense of personal autonomy. And, some people might say it's selfishness. I just think we're exercising what it feels like to be individualized from this larger whole. And I think that, from a sociological standpoint, we have to have guidance. We have to have some sort of valuation. We have to have positive and negative and pushing and pulling in order to get anything done as a society. You really can't. There are some people, right, who totally isolate and are not dependent on other human beings in their human existence. But the vast majority of us are grouping into societies and cultures and neighborhoods and families and all of it. And so we have to have guidance for how to exercise our individuality, which is why we came here, without harming others. And I don't know that we ever can really truly prevent that harm. We know some categories. If you end somebody's physical life, that's leaving the people that they're interacting with in a lurch because that person has been murdered. And that, we got to do something about that as a group. But beyond our humanity, it goes out the window. There's no good and bad. In my mind, there's no heaven or hell. It's all a part of the bigger necessity that creates that one being. You can't have really, really great without really, really bad. And so they become blurred and just a part of the mixture.
So basically you were told that you're not teaching enough.
Yeah.
Have you discovered since then what you're supposed to be teaching? And if so, what is it?
It's funny. A few years before I really started to integrate this awareness and accept it, I was like, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to teach. So I went and taught like college classes, and I loved it. And it was really fulfilling to have that sort of common curiosity with students. And, they would ask questions, and then I was able to ask questions to get them to ask new questions. And together we were creating this new sense of understanding. So it was really great and fulfilling, but it was really clear to me that my job here is not to teach public policy. I mean, there are a lot of statisticians out there who can teach you how to calculate these things. And that's really wasn't what it was about. I have some physical pain-ish, neurological pain, and I started practicing Reiki, which is an ancient healing tradition, energy healing tradition. So then for a while, I started healing myself and resolving pain for myself. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to be teaching people Reiki and self-healing and how to listen to your body and mind over matter and mindfulness and meditation. Maybe it's that realm of practical spirituality, I guess. And that also fulfilling. And I've seen some really great things. And I've had some students that have gone on to really, make change in their own lives and the lives of other people. I still don't think that's it. I think I'm supposed to just be teaching by example. So I think certainly in my career, I've been given these opportunities to be an attorney in new ways. And I think I'm supposed to be teaching compassion. And I think I'm supposed to be teaching how to unconditionally love, regardless of the things that our society has ticked off as positive or negative. So, in my current iteration of being an attorney, I work a lot with therapeutic courts. So people who have committed crimes because they have an underlying unmanaged mental health concern or an addiction to substances. And, according to our law, they've committed some pretty horrible things, but it's not about a value on their soul. And so, practicing compassion in the law can be a little tricky because it's so black and white. I think I'm supposed to be teaching by example, and I think I'm supposed to be teaching compassion and unconditional love and empathy and how to rely on our intuition. I don't know. Hopefully I've got a whole lot more years to write the book, I guess.
Well, if there's something that you could teach us all about being on the other side or about near-death experiences in general, what would you teach us?
Mindfulness matters. It's not a kitschy thing that we put on coffee mugs and pass out. Like it really matters. That's our language of our own humanity and how we translate from soul to our humanity. How to drive your human. So that recognition of we are more than what our human iteration allows us to show. It's the cage. Our human body, our human existence is the cage that's cutting off the picture of our wholeness. So I think that I think there's so much more to our existence than this one particular lifetime or the third one back or the third one ahead. And we're going to keep having them and we're going to keep being confronted with the same lessons or opportunities to learn until we're able to integrate that wholeness that we are, that doesn't fit into our human suit.
I have not had many Buddhist guests on. So can you share with us a little bit about how your beliefs match the Buddhist beliefs and what those are?
Maybe. I belong to a Buddhist temple, but it is a wholly different line of Buddhism than what I know to be true for myself. And so I've not ever talked to a Tibetan Buddhist. I've only read. We believe in reincarnation. We believe that we continue to see the struggles until we learn the lesson. We believe in existence beyond our suffering. Our human existence is commonly experienced as suffering, and you can escape that suffering if you can transcend the limitations of your human. I believe that pain, which is derived from our human existence, right? It's that on that valuation scale that we use as humans, plus the resistance to that pain creates the suffering. Yeah, I'm not the best spokesperson for Buddhism because I'm still learning as I go
Mhm.
and researching as I go and trying it out. And I don't know. I don't know. But I do know I'm super excited about it. So I'm atypical because Buddhists don't usually go out proselytizing,
Mm.
but I'd be a good cheerleader. It's made a huge difference to always go back to Buddhist text and ponder. I'm having a struggle. I'm having a pain. What am I resisting? What is the lesson that I need to take a look at here? And once I do that and I'm able to move past it, then the pain goes away. Or I don't know if it goes away. I manage it better and I live with it and it becomes a part of this existence. It expands my sense of my humanity. So it feels like I'm inviting in that bigger sense of soul into this little tiny body, this little tiny cage, and living bigger in my own space.
Basically, everyone suffers here. Do you think that's part of the lesson that we're supposed to have while being here?
Yes, absolutely. The suffering is absolutely the title on the assignment sheet. And how we choose to suffer truly.
Why do we
At
sign
the
up
end of
for
the
that?
it's part of being an individual. And the only way to be an individual is to have something to push back on. You got to have the negative. You got to have the things that you're going to resist in order to be an individual, to have those individual experiences and characteristics in your life. Um, yeah, no, I think it's the point. I tend to be like, bring it on. Like, there's not a whole lot that scares me anymore. I'm totally fearless. Um, I have a disconnect in time and space because it's all one. It's all one. And if we want to escape that one and have a something that belongs just to us, we have to have something to experience.
Do you feel like you experienced God or source during your NDE?
I prefer the term source, but yeah, and then the caveat is I think we're all talking about the same thing. I'm a lot less antagonistic towards religious people. I wouldn't call myself a religious person. I don't, number one, I don't think Buddhism is a religion. I think of it as a philosophy distinct from religion. But number two, um, I think we're all talking about the same energy. I think energy, scientifically, we know it continues, it changes, it transmutes, but it doesn't go away. And so I think we're all talking about energy, and I think that there are different versions of the same kind of story. And if you really get to the lessons of those stories and peel back the characters, we're all talking about the same thing. We're all talking about a higher plane of existence. When we're human, we say heaven or hell. I don't, but most humanity, right? We have this concept of heaven and hell and good and bad, and I think we're all talking about the same energetic feelings.
Comparing the other side to ours, which side do you think is more real?
Oh, that side for sure. And that's where I get hung up on this idea of time and space, because I'm here and I have a mortgage to pay and, like a job to go to and momming duties and dogs, that feels instantly real. But it's really just the pieces and parts of this life that I chose to be a part of and that apparently I chose to come back to. Um, it's the play in which I'm exercising my autonomy. But real is the other side.
Could you consider it like we're in a simulation or like playing a game?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That totally makes sense to me. I've seen some new research coming out too that people can communicate from a distance, telepathically. I don't know that they use that word, but it's mind to mind communication. I absolutely believe it. I think playing a game makes sense, we put the cartridge in, and, I'm going to be a white lady this time. And, maybe next time I'll be a brown dog, or a Catholic priest. I don't know. We put the cartridge in, we pick the lessons, and then it bears out with characteristics that will lead us in this lifetime to those lessons. I think we come here to learn.
Did you used to walk in atheist circles before your NDE? If so, are you still walking in those circles?
Yeah. I was a member of the American Atheists. They gave me scholarships to a Jesuit university for law school. I was very antagonistic in some portions of my young adulthood. I would seek out people that had religious beliefs or who were very spiritual, and I would go about challenging them. It's part of why I went into the law, because I was so antagonistic and judgmental, quite frankly. I do still associate with a lot of my atheist friends, and I have a healthy dose of respect for the commitment to personal autonomy that they have. I think they're limiting themselves, and so sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. And they love me anyway, and they pat me on the head and go, "Yeah, you experienced something. Okay, Aimee." So it is what it is.
What do you think inspires you about your experience?
The pure joy, the pure joy that I felt in that light embrace, in the aha moments of the life review, where I felt forgiven, and that I was forgiving people who had, transgressed my existence. I've had, I think we all experience trauma, and I've had my fair share of weird life circumstances that were pretty traumatic, and not so much anymore. I felt joy for having had the experience. The really hard stuff has given me the richest lessons. It's been the biggest opportunity to grow as an individual and bring that universal awareness to this existence. So I think it's joy. I think I'm inspired by joy. I get up excited every day. And I have a really hard day. I can have staff people that have a million things that I need to, shift gears, and pleadings that have to go into court, and clients that are, really struggling, and I'm excited about it all. I wake up happy. I wake up joyful.
Have you noticed since your experience that you have any cognitive changes that could be considered psychic?
Yes, absolutely. Especially the practice of Reiki. Yeah, I have premonitions. My intuition is like ridiculous. Alarm bells all the time. I feel the energy around me. I can, I have premonitions. I see a scene and I know what's going to happen before it happens. And that's a little creepy, quite frankly. I would not have expected that prior to the NDE. I definitely live life more intuitively. And because I do, when I used to be diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder, I don't have any anxiety anymore. There's like no fear, no anxiety. I just roll with it, and I've learned to trust my intuition. And if something doesn't feel right, then I have, sometimes a few seconds, sometimes a few days to get in alignment with myself and be prepared for whatever's happening. Because I'm not afraid to die. What's going to happen? I'm going to die. I mean.
So you had this anxiety disorder before your experience?
I did, yeah. I was in theater as a young person, which is enough to do anybody in. That's constant judgment, constant every moment. So, yeah. I used to take pharmaceuticals for anxiety, and now I'm 100% pharma free. And I absolutely attribute that to the NDE and my ability to rely on my intuition and to listen to my body and adjust my own energy, my own core energy. I align with source, and I'm good.
What type of meditation do you do?
It varies. It varies. Sometimes I rely on guided meditation, with famous people who are doing guided meditation, or just people that I find and I like the sound of their voice. Sometimes I just go absolutely to silence and close everything off, and just it feels like I'm in that floating blackness. And then I center back to that light. I practice Reiki a lot, so I focus on my chakras. Yeah, it varies. It depends on what happened in the day that punched a hole in my alignment that I've got to restore, or what I'm preparing for.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who has lost a loved one and is grieving?
Breathe, and know that breath is touching the breath from all, that we're all connected. That there's not pain. There's no pain. There's no pain. It's so joyful and so full and so right. That truly it's not possible from my perspective. And I know there are some NDEers who have had a really, what they would classify as a really horrific experience, and perhaps they've seen this hell. I can't relate to that. I'm not saying they didn't experience what they experienced. I think we all go through an integration when we come back, and we assign meaning based on what our human existence has been. So I don't want to devalue what other people say, but I think that you can't die and be there, and have it be any worse than what we experience here. Like, this is hell. Hell is what we live every day, because it's constantly the pain, the resistance, the suffering, the demands, the expectations, the failures. That's how we define humanity. So if you're grieving, you've lost somebody, know that wholeness, that return to home, that return to source is so fulfilling, that when they come back to their next life, they're going to bring that with them. And when you die, you're going to experience that, and you're going to come back and bring that with. That I don't know. Grief is hard. Grief is hard because it doesn't really exist over there. We're good. We're good. We're whole. We're connected. It's really a human creation, this grief. So again, the pain, the grief, plus the resistance, is creating the suffering. And I think we do choose that. That's part of being human. We've chosen to live here amongst other people who have chosen to live here. We all have our own return date.
So are you saying the best way is to accept the pain?
Yeah.
And then that will reduce your suffering?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds a little harsh. Accept the pain. Yeah. I guess that is what I'm saying. I'm not intending to be really harsh. The intention is to say, it's a part of this particular lifetime. It's a part of this particular humaning. And it's not forever, and it does change. And when we learn to accept or integrate that reality, then I do believe we can connect. When we get to our core alignment, we can connect with the people that we classify as lost to death. They're coming back. They're coming back. You're coming back. You're going there. We're all coming and going, and we will reunite. Some people think I'm completely loony when I say this, but I absolutely believe that I had this dog that I really, really loved, and she died, because pets die too. Then I had the NDE. Then I had several years without a dog. And then I got a puppy, and that puppy is my dog. That's the dog that I had. She came back, and there is no disputing it. People, the closest people in my life that knew that dog and know this dog, can see it. It's the same personality. the same behavioral issues. Like if she's mad, she stomps her feet and huffs at me like the other dog did. You can call her by the other dog's name, and she knows now because we've been doing it for years. But originally, when she was a puppy, I mistakenly called her the other dog's name, and she behaved exactly the same. It's the same dog. So I do believe our paths cross multiple times because we're all one, and like attracts like, and we're all alike. And so we find our place back.
It's interesting. It's interesting is just as you started talking about your dog, my dog came up to me and wanted up.
Hello.
So that's an interesting coincidence that usually it's not very often that she wants up while I'm working. Well, maybe your dog, you know, as we can possibly choose our lives pre-birth, knew that she wanted to come, or he wanted to come back to you.
Yeah, right.
She gives me great treats, so I want to go back to her and takes good care of me. When talking about there's, you know, no wrong or right on the other side and everybody's forgiven, a lot of people will usually appear to bring up the example like, well, what about Hitler or, you know, or some other mass murderer? How does that play in your opinion?
It plays in because if we didn't have opposite and equal actions and reactions, we would not have the platform to learn what being an individual is all about. We come from this commonality. So in order to learn that in tangible ways and experience our individuality, we have to have people that are doing things that feel harmful to us. Or we have to be doing things that feel harmful to other people because we wouldn't get the resistance if we didn't have the pain. And without the resistance, we don't have the suffering. And without the suffering, we don't have the internal drive to make a change. I mean, I'm not in any way saying, yay, Hitler. I'm not. I think it's atrocious. At a human level, what we saw is atrocious. And I think we see it in other ways too, throughout history. But I think we wouldn't have learned the value of acceptance and love and support and connecting to the source where we all are one if we didn't have somebody stepping out of line, as we define it in our humanity. So, I've had some pretty horrible things happen in my life, and I'm actually grateful for those horrible things because they taught me how to human better. They taught me why it's important not to do those things to other people, right? It taught me how to love through the pain. So I don't hang with people who harmed me in the past. We're not friends. I don't need to have them in my daily life, but I did need them in order to learn the self-compassion and the self-forgiveness and to resonate with my own empathy for suffering. So
it's interesting that you use the word self-forgiveness. Does forgiving them also important? Or is forgiving them also important?
Yeah. To the degree that I believe in forgiveness, right? Again, I don't believe in good and bad. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and the reason is for us to learn. So, at the same time, forgiveness is like so huge and such an important thing. And at the other side of that coin, it's really quite irrelevant. Like everybody has a role, and if we were in that video game and checking our things that we wanted to have in our cartridge, we pick lessons, and for those lessons to happen, we have to have those things to push against. So forgiveness, we chose lessons. And in order to learn that lesson, given the rest of the characteristics in our human existence, maybe it had to play out that way. And sucks to be you, sucks to be me. It is what it is. That's what being human is about on both sides of the coin. And we all do good things and we all do bad things.
Do you think there's an end point to reincarnating and maybe we go on to do something else?
Yeah. I don't know. I could see choosing not to incarnate again. I think it's a little arrogant to think that it would be possible for me to learn everything that I needed to learn. So, as a curious person, as somebody that constantly wants to learn, I think it's within our realm to choose to incarnate. And maybe souls get tired and they choose to stop incarnating. That's unfathomable to me, because I'm so eternally curious that I would want to come back and, have blonde hair maybe, or I'm trying to be silly. There are big lessons to be learned in our humanity. And I think they're infinite. I think that the characteristic combinations are infinite, and that I, as an individual human, would never run out of possibilities of things I would want to try. But I guess it's possible that maybe souls get tired and become done. I didn't see a reason to come back. In fact, over the 13 years, there were definitely periods where I was very actively, and I believe rationally, suicidal. It was just so great there and so horrible here, especially with the brain injury, that I just wanted to die and not come back. I knew that's when I really started to delve deep into the Buddhism and the value of our individuality and incarnating. I knew that if I called it short in this lifetime, that I wouldn't really be able to not come back. There's still so much fundamental for me to learn that it wouldn't be playing with the color of my hair. That I really had to get real in soul, in my human, before it would be enough learning and teaching. So I don't know. I think we choose to come here, and I think that we could equally choose not to.
Did you notice while being on the other side that you either kind of knew everything or at least had access to knowing everything if you asked the question?
Access. Absolutely. I felt like I knew it, but I didn't have recall for it. I could, and then I tend to think of my own brain and memories and knowledge and accessing it as like an old school card catalog that, like it's all like perfectly sorted and you got to flip through the cards. I don't have like a supercomputer that I can just call it up. So that's an NDE executive function issue. I feel like I have access to it all. Is it usable? Probably not. I live in this human with a brain that got zapped. So, the logistics of accessing it and integrating it are two completely different things. But I feel when I'm connected, when I'm in alignment, and when I'm very meditative, I could go ask any question and get an answer. Absolutely. I just may not think about what I want to ask.
Do you think it's possible that you even planned this NDE pre-birth?
Ooh, probably. That sounds like something I would do. Knowing who I am in this human existence. Yeah, I could see that. I think it's possible. Yeah.
It's like it makes it double challenging.
Yeah. I could see it. And now on this side of it with the Buddhist philosophy, that makes a whole lot of sense. I wouldn't have said that in my pre-NDE atheist phase. I wouldn't have acknowledged that we were choosing anything pre-birth. I wouldn't have acknowledged that we would have memory of our birth process. And I don't. I know a lot of people who do, who can remember their birthing process and remember picking their parents. I don't have that. It's probably there. If I meditated long enough, I could probably come to that. I'm much more future focused than history, I guess. I think past life regression is fascinating, but I'm really like, what can I create in this human? How can I maximize the tools I've got right now? So I can totally see picking this as a lesson. It's a pretty good one. It's fun.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Totally. I love talking about it, and there's just not a whole lot of natural places for me to talk about it in my daily existence. The people who know me really well are just real tired of it, right? Like, it's nothing new. That's Aimee. And then I can't really talk about this in court. That doesn't fly. So yes, I'm always open. I always want to talk about it.
Well, what's the best way to reach you?
Probably Facebook.
Okay. All right, Aimee, before we finish up, can you give us one last positive message?
Love is a complete sentence. It's in every breath. It's in every smile. It's in every growl. It's in every scolding, in every handshake. Love is a complete sentence. It's what we are. It's what we are. We don't need to break it down. We don't need to apply it in certain ways. We just need to sit and rest and be whole in that unconditional love.
Thank you for that message. And Aimee, thank you again for being my guest.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.